I'm pretty sure in that book he goes over like the 4-step process of conscious learning, unconscious learning, conscious understanding, subconscious understanding. And this is a concept I talk about a lot when I say, like, if you need to, first of all, if you're going to be thinking in neutral or trying to outthink your opponent, you need to have enough built into your subconscious understanding that you can at least function on a foundational level, so that you don't have to be thinking about those sorts of things in the moment. So this is where I talk about where I talk about comfort. So if you get put into an uncomfortable situation, usually that takes away a lot of that subconscious understanding. This is like a situation that you're like, I'm unfamiliar, I feel very pressured right now, how do I escape this? What am I supposed to do? I don't have the situational awareness to like deal with this, and you have to now devote brain power to like thinking about that. And then other things will suffer at the same time. So it's like, it's incredibly hard to outthink your opponent when you have to focus on like exactly what's happening when you're uncomfortable or off balance. So I think it's like, it's a process of practicing, building in that subconscious understanding of not only your execution, but also kind of the situations that are built into the game. You know, like if this person's above me, I can either do this, this, or this. And like, you just kind of do the strongest one in the moment based on like previous information that you've gotten. But yeah, I do think that there's kind of like two schools of people in Melee, it seems. It's like these people that understand flow state to be this thing where they don't think at all, and they're just kind of letting it happen. And then there's the people who, when they're in flow state, they feel like everything is making sense, and they can outthink their opponent. They're like, last time he did this, and this is going to like perfectly translate into, you know, risk-reward skewing in my favor. I position myself perfectly right here, and like they're able to think and move kind of at once, which is kind of the flow for them. And that's kind of how I see it. But I do think that thinking is really important, and like adapting to your opponent's incredibly important. And all I was trying to say is that it's really difficult if you don't have all of that subconscious understanding built in. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I think that's kind of why I struggle against Falco a lot, because Falco lasers, especially at my level where I'm not like super comfortable dealing with them, is very much that kind of like, I'm really uncomfortable, I can't move, help me.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna try tilting.
Yeah, I talked about recently about how I think that playing as Falco is the most fun in the game, and I think playing against Falco is one of the least fun things to do. And someone was like, why? Like, you get to combo him or whatever. But I constantly feel inhibited. I feel like my character is just a lesser version of itself when I play against Falco. And that just feels bad. When I play Marth against Sheik, it's like, well, yeah, he has down throw fair or whatever, but at least I have all of my tools. You know, I can move exactly how I want. I can jump whenever I want, and like there's risk reward involved, but it's like Falco's like, oh, you want to jump? Nope. And then it's like, you want to dash? Nope. And it's like, oh my goodness. And it's so different the way that you have to deal with like the amount of frames you have to do things in the game. It's when you're fighting against Falco, like he makes you uncomfortable. You get lasered and you think, well, usually when someone's approaching me from this distance, I have time to do X, but like you don't if you're in laser stun, or if you've been put into shield, or if you get lasered out of your jump. And so like you have to have this like really strong understanding of just like the laser interactions, and that's kind of that like situational awareness that I was talking about, but it's very like specific to Falco. And so I definitely understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's like, on the one hand, once I've started feeling a little bit more comfortable with it recently, and like after understanding like, oh, I just have to wait like however many more frames, it feels a lot better. But even especially when I'm like in the heat of a moment in a tournament set, I can just be like, oh god, what's happening?
Definitely. And then like it's hard too, because you never really know how many lasers this Falco is going to shoot. And it's like, well, maybe against your practice partner, like you're practicing it on net play against like a certain Falco, and he was doing like laser into aerial, and you're like, oh, I just wait a certain amount of frames, dash back, and I grab him. Cool. This is how I deal with that. And then the next Falco you fight, he like spams laser in place, and you dash back, and he didn't move forward at all. And now you're like,
yep.
Okay, what am I supposed to do from here? Like, this is really hard, because now I'm in the corner, and I'm too far away to hit him, and he has a projectile, and if I jump, that doesn't seem that good for me. And it's like, things can get real scary real fast if you don't have it all thought out, or like have it practiced. And like different Falcos play in different ways. It's so hard to like really understand the character instead of like the player.
and just more generally, like Falco as a tempo controller, I think is really one of the like better aspects of his gameplay. Because like I know personally, as a Marth player, I like controlling the tempo of the game by like pacing my dashes and like how I approach and how I counter approaches. But with Falco, it's kind of like, well, I was gonna do that, but then I got lasered, so I have to reset it.
Yep. I definitely get that. Are there any specific things that you're having trouble dealing with that you'd like to talk about? Any like interactions that are giving you trouble, or are there any? Also, I'm down to just talk more like general concepts if you'd like.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, because the way I've sort of been playing recently is kind of weird, just because I've had a lot of like schoolwork and stuff to do, so I don't have too much time to actually like practice things I've been thinking about to like get a real more like physical understanding. But
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe it's I feel like I've been getting a lot better at like Falco take laser stuff, but I still kind of I feel like I still have trouble sort of like limiting approach options, like kind of staying in that in more of a threat range against Falco. I feel like I find myself just like doing a lot of like take laser dash back, and especially when they don't approaching aerial, you're kind of just like giving up like ground space for no reason. So I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on sort of that like threat ranges against Falco and how to like deal with that.
I think that standing in a threatening range for Marth is incredibly important. I think that the easy way to play the matchup is to like power shield lasers, and if you're not power shielding the lasers, you do take laser dash back. And then if the Falco doesn't approach, you just move to side platform after he hasn't like approached, right? This is like the very simplified version, but I swear to God, you could spam this against like people going all the way up to like some of the people in the top 100 probably, and it's really effective because it's hard to deal with. But if they can deal with it, if their execution is good, and if they're patient and space themselves correctly, essentially doing that strategy is useless, right? You put yourself on the side platform, Falco's moves like off center, and then what? You're kind of just in a bad spot again, and it's not great. Or if he calls out, you're like take laser dash back with another approaching laser or something like that. It can get really difficult. So like what I would suggest again is like positioning yourself closely to Falco. It can be difficult, but I think that like using platforms to kind of approach with short hop off and then different fast fall timings and different aerials is really good. And then also I think that like wave dashing close to Falco can be really important, because Falco tries to set up these certain spacings, but it takes time. And if he's not reacting perfectly, or even if he is sometimes, it can be really hard to deal with a Marth that's just moving forward in a burst at him, because he needs to commit a lot of frames to get this laser out so that he can set up this spacing where your threat range has been limited. Because if you get hit by a laser, you can't just like immediate dash and then hit him. You have to like wait a very long time, then dash, then jump, then aerial. All of those things take a lot of frames. And at that point, Falco's already, he's landed on the ground for only 4 frames after shooting you with a laser, and he can do whatever he wants. But if you're close to him, there's definitely things that you can like make him think about, right? For example, if you do like take laser jab and you're close enough to do that, a lot of times that's something that can throw Falco off balance, especially if you're positioned in a way that when you hit him with the jab, it either tippers him, which actually sends him pretty far away, or can knock down at higher percents, or just at a spacing where he can't just immediately like jump aerial or jab back at you, or like crouch cancel down tilt or something, or just grab, because your jab actually outranges most of what Falco can do. And also Falcos a lot of the time are very not good at dealing with being thrown off balance. So like if you do get like a power shield and that laser hits them, a lot of times Falcos are incredibly bad at dealing with that. They just get hit and then they accidentally jump and all of the control on the ground is completely gone, or they like flub another aerial, or they side B on accident, or they just shield immediately, and now you can like force some really good mix-ups. It's kind of the same thing with the jab. You run in there, you jab, and although you might not be like a real huge advantage, you're now close, you're now threatening, and you can at least like do some really powerful mix-ups right next to him.
Yeah. I've noticed in my gameplay, I think I've done a little bit of the take laser jab stuff, and I find it to be pretty good at like stuffing their approach, but then I know I typically have more trouble like either just like pushing that sort of like advantage that I've just gotten, or like punishing directly off of it. So I think that's just kind of something I need to like work on in terms of just execution and punish game, rather than like necessarily thinking about it too hard.
Have you seen PPMD versus Zanguzen, by the way?
No.
So, PPMD says that it's very funny. I'm gonna link it in the general chat in the Discord.
Okay.
Here, there's that. You can watch this at any point, really. But PPMD says that this is the only game in which a Marth plays well against a Falco. And it's kind of wild. I do think that he positions himself pretty interestingly. I think a lot of what he does could kind of be countered by like some pretty hard reads from the other Falco, or like better positioning and better reactions. But PPMD's the Marth here, and and he plays really well, at least. So I think there's a lot to think about, like in terms of like which aerials he's using, the timing in which he's doing those things, and where he's standing against the Falco to kind of be effective and kind of push that that threat once he's gotten in.
Okay, yeah, I've been looking for some PPMD versus Falco VODs, but the problem is that like the only one is him versus West Balls at Summit that I could find like easily. So not the most information to actually like work with.
Yeah, it's definitely not the most information. But he did say this. He thinks this is the only VOD in which Amarth like does good things against a Falco. It's so interesting too, because I actually think that Zane just spams that style that I talked about with you earlier, where like you take laser dash back, and if you're not doing that, you're trying to power shield and then do like a mix up like power shield instant nair, power shield wave dash forward. And if the Falco's shooting lasers that are too low, or if they're shooting them above your head or at a height where you can't jump over them, that could get really difficult for you. And then like if you dash back and he doesn't approach, that gets really difficult for you. And then if you're on the side platform and he's like off center or directly below you, it gets really difficult for you. And it's like Zane just kind of spams those three things over and over and over again, and then he generally kills you off of like the mix up that he wins.
Yeah, I've been noticing, like, watching him play recently, he kind of just does that thing where he just crouches at you menacingly. and then like someone, I like, depending on the character, it's some sort of like power shield into grab or some variation of that Zane just kills you off of. And I've kind of thought about whether or not I could actually pull that off, and I don't think I want to, even if I could.
I don't think that that's a terribly effective strategy. I'm not certain of it yet, because like nobody just crouches, but like sometimes when I play against Zane, he does just crouch, and I think that he's doing that to test things. He normally doesn't do that when I play him in tournament, but when I play him in friendlies, like at tournaments, and then also the most recent time I played him on net play, he just kind of crouches there. And I told him in person, I was playing him at GTX, and he was just crouching, and I was shooting really low lasers, and he was like trying to power shield every single one. You see his head bobbing every time he's trying to shield. And I was like, do you want me to tell you a secret? He's like, yeah, what's up? I was like, you can't power shield those if I shoot them too low. And he's like, yeah, I know, but I just think that it's like better for like blah, blah, blah. He gave me like a bunch of reasons, and I was like, okay, but like this is really hurting you. Like I was getting a lot of openings off of him just doing that. But his idea is that the reaction point, or I guess I can't speak for him, but I'm pretty sure what he's saying is that like the reaction point is in the Falco jump, not the laser. And so when I jump at him, he is going to shield either way. So if I do an aerial, a lot of times he does power shield up tilt on the aerial, and then, or he like power shield grabs on like the approaching laser. And so he's going to shield either way if I'm jumping at him. And so he feels as though he can either deal with laser or move. Like, this must be really effective. What's the Falco supposed to do? But my response would be, like, run up and grab him, or shoot low lasers, or do a tomahawk shine. I feel like there's a lot of answers to just playing simply in one way like that. And I feel like in that sense, Zane just kind of runs through these really heavy, like, they're kind of execution tests, but they're also like idea tests. Like, do you have the ability to like, because if it beats laser and move, like, how is the Falco going to deal with this? And I feel like a lot of Falcos could get overwhelmed.
Yeah, I've actually talked with Stango about this a little bit, because we were on a carpool one time, and I think he brought up the point that like he thought that every Falco approach is reactable, and I don't know how true that is, but and I'm probably misquoting him too, so I hope he's not listening. But
that's okay.
But yeah, it was basically like the idea of that similar sort of concept that was like, it isn't necessarily about the laser itself, but it's like the mix up afterwards, and that like with very few exceptions, you can typically react to most of them. But
yeah,
I don't know how like feasible of a game plan that is unless you're just like really, really confident in your punishes and like the mix-ups themselves.
Yeah. I think I understand what he means. If he was saying any of this, we'll just say that you said these things. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Don't put the blame on me.
yeah. Right. If you believe them to be true, regardless. It's like there are definitely spacings where what Falco is doing is reactable, but like even with just a simple like short hop and a laser, if Falco is close enough, that is not reactable. Like I can either fast fall or not fast fall. I can start my lasers at different timings. I can drift in a different way. Like I don't have to laser. I could do a fast fall so that my laser never even comes out. So you tried to power shield the laser, but it didn't. And now you try to power shield grab, but I instantly shine once I met the ground instead of lasering. So I'm not in laser stun from the power shielded laser. So like even that in a sense isn't reactable. And then if I stand at a perfect range against Marth, it's a very specific range, but if I stand at a certain range and I shoot lasers in place, you're in an unreactable zone of me being able to approach you or continuously do lasers or move backwards. So you cannot react to me doing anything, but I can react to whatever you do. If you wave dash forward, I can recognize that you had moved forward and I shot a laser. Now I can like shine immediately or grab or whatever I want to do. If you do a jump, I can hit you with that laser out of your jump and then reactively dash short hop near you. If you move backwards, I can reactively shoot another laser in place or do a slight approach laser. And so it's all about like positioning, because there are definitely positions where Marth can react to everything Falco does, but there are also a number of positions where Falco can react to everything Marth does. So it's all about like initial positioning, I think, which is kind of like the topic of the whole conversation that we've been having. And
Yeah, it is.
it's kind of hard to talk about without like a setup in front of you or us, which is kind of why I linked you that PPMD set, because I do think that he positions himself pretty well. And
Yeah, I'm
so
definitely gonna have to look at it.
yeah, I think the game is really complicated, and I think that like getting yourself into those spots is preferable, and I think that's probably at the end of the day what he was kind of trying to translate to you.
Hmm. Yeah, I bet it was definitely more of a like positioning kind of topic than necessarily a like Falco's bad lol.
Yeah.
But who knows? I don't know. I'm still pretty new to this game, especially relative to everyone else who's playing competitively. So I can't always like say that I know what they're trying to mean whenever they actually like communicate an idea to me.
Yeah. I mean, it's difficult, and it's difficult to like understand concepts. And like I said, I think when I was talking about one thing I do want to clarify, not I think, but one thing I want to clarify is that like when I was talking about how there's that kind of that pattern of you take laser dash back, if they haven't moved forward, you just move to side platform. If they're still in the center stage, you run off fair and then you hit them. And I was talking about how that's kind of like not that good if the Falco's like perfectly executing or like positioning himself perfectly. It's like it's hard for Falco to do all those things, and it's good to test your opponent. And it's like it's one thing to play properly, but like at the end of the day, a competition is about like trying to defeat your opponent, right? And
Yeah.
so like if you can abuse those certain things against your opponent, it's like, well, what you're doing is not terribly difficult, and then like he has to play like really perfectly around it. Forcing that sort of thing on your opponent is very good. It's similar how in like a debate, if you like if someone brings up a point and you push them on that, you're like, wait, well, like, I think this is a bad thing. Like, could you explain that further? It's like, if they can't explain it further, it really makes them look bad. And
Yeah, you just win.
yeah, you just win. So it's like putting the pressure on your opponent to perform can be very good.
Yeah, I think there's definitely been, just as a common melee example, and like Marth versus Spacey, I'm pretty sure I've definitely like taken a few sets just because I randomly decided to down throw S-Smash to see if they like could tech it, and then they didn't, and I got a stock. So,
Right.
like, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But anything else we can maybe go over like one other thing. I think maybe some other people want to get in, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if someone else wants to hop in, they're certainly more than welcome to. I mean, I can just continuously talk about Marth Falco for an hour. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I'm down to get better, so.
I understand. Well, maybe we'll call it here, but this is actually really, really fun for me. So maybe I'll do this more often, and maybe even like do it later today or something, and we can get you back in. But
Yeah, I mean, this was a lot of fun to just like chat, you know.
yeah, I think so too. Well, thanks for joining the call.